Move on and talk more about the hostage situation and the prisoner exchanges that have robbed Israel of its leverage, that Hamas are in control of the initiative. For more on that, my next guest is hostage negotiator Scott Walker, standing by. Scott, good to speak to you again. I spoke to you at the beginning of this crisis, and it really has gone on more than 50 days probably since you and I last spoke. Just give us your sense of what you make about the exchanges that are ongoing so far. We're seeing some at this very moment.
I think it's really worth emphasizing the significance of where we find ourselves now. Who would have thought that the ceasefire would have held, albeit there's been a few obstacles and bumps in the road to get here. But this has really been a significant achievement that it's held, and we've managed to get the number of hostages back that we have. But as you've already mentioned, it's still very sensitive and challenging. And let's hope for the next few days that can hold and we can get more hostages out as well.
It is incredibly sensitive and challenging. I think there's some elements to it because we're not used to watching hostage releases. Most of us aren't hostage negotiators like you. So I think there are some questions the public has. Most notably today was the reports, the accounts from the hostages themselves that have been held underground in these tunnels. I think there's some shock from some quarters that, some people are saying there was even some words of thanks to the hostage, to the people who took them captive. I mean, how do you explain that from an expert point of view?
Well, when you think about it, the hostages are usually going to be in a close confinement with the hostage takers for a long period of time. And as we've seen, that's been for a number of weeks now. And one of the things we always try and get hostages to do is to humanize themselves, make them as human as possible to their captors, so they're likely to be better treated. Now, it's not going to be lots of luxury down there, but it's in the hostage takers' interest to look after their hostages as much as possible. Feed them, water them, give them some medical care if need be. So it's understandable why, there could be some kind of communication and relationship building between them.
And, that being said, I want to stress, just in case anybody's viewing this and thinks that I'm under any illusions here, obviously I'm aware, we also had accounts and reports of elderly women saying they were sat in plastic chairs for 50 days, sleeping with a sheet over them. Food was very scant. Some say they reported feeling suffocated. Unbelievable conditions, and to be held mostly underground without any light for that length of time. It must be astonishing for them to come back and for their families. In terms of the families, though, being released sort of person at a time, is this a tactic you think Hamas is doing deliberately to extend this situation?
It's certainly in both sides' interest to extend the truce for a while longer. Hamas is probably even longer as well, because whilst the truce holds, whilst the ceasefire is in place, they can regroup, rearm, recharge, and they're not being bombarded by the Israelis. And it means they're going to get more of their prisoners released. Whereas Israel's perspective, yes, they want to get as many hostages back, but they've got a ground offensive still to undertake to demolish Hamas.
And in terms of the hostages coming home, how much more do you think we're going to hear from them? Is it, in these situations, is it up to the hostages and their families how much they decide to tell of their stories and speak to the press? Do you think the government are having any say in it and saying don't talk? I mean, how much more information do you think we're going to get about their condition and what they experienced?
Well, normally you've only got one or a handful of hostages to debrief and engage with them about the media, but here eventually you're going to have tens and dozens of hostages coming back, and it will be down to them whether or not they want to speak to the media. I can't see any of them will want to do so anytime soon, but they will be supported not just medically, but how they can reintegrate themselves back into their daily lives and how to deal with the media. And of course, there are specialist charities and support organizations for hostages about how to deal with the media as well.
Scott Walker, hostage negotiator, always interesting to talk. Thank you.